إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل الله فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له في علاه وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله الذي اصطفاه اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وصحبه الطيبين ومن دعا بدعوتهم وسلك سبيلهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا. صدق الله العظيم. First and foremost, my apologies for a somewhat late arrival. The previous weeks it was always Sheikh's fault. This week is my fault. We have come in our discussion to the Khilaf of Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu, and we are now in the Khilaf of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu. From the year 35, 36 up to the year 40, a period of about 4 or 5 years, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib was the Khalifa at the head of affairs of the Muslim community of the Ummah. And during that time we noticed that the movement that was there in the Ummah had always been it has been a linear movement. The Ummah had been moving forward. Islam had been spreading all the time, conquering new territories, new people entering Islam. The land controlled from Medina, the landmass was growing larger and larger. The people who were entering the faith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam were increasing steadily. And then came the calamitous events that led to the death of Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu at the hands of those murderers in Medina. And Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu takes over the reins of leadership of this ummah at a time of great upheaval, great instability, great obscurity. A situation where you don't know whether what you are seeing is actually what you are seeing. You don't know whether the person standing by your side is with you in mind and heart or is he not. And all of this on account of a conspiracy so exquisitely woven that it even led to confusion within the minds of the senior Sahaba radiyallahu anhum wa ardahum ajma'in. In this manner, it comes about that 3 different wars are fought in the time of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu, and the Muslim Ummah finds itself divided in 3 different groupings. In the middle there is the mainstream Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that particular group that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had predicted already, that there will always be a group that will remain upon haqq. There will come winds of adversity. There will come instances of division and diversion from our ultimate objectives. But there will always remain one particular group that will remain upon haqq, and that is the people who are upon ma ana alayhi wa ashabi. Those who follow what Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, what I am upon, and that which my Sahaba radiyallahu anhum are upon. And then to the 2 extremes that was in the middle, to the one side there was a certain group that took the personality of Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu anhu and placed it on such a pedestal that it even outstrips the ranks of the Anbiya, sometimes even seeking to equate his rank with that of Allah Ta'ala, declaring him God incarnate. There was that group as well. No one denies that. Even the Shia do not deny it. There were those in the lifetime of Ali ibn Abi Talib who raised his status to such an extent that he himself had to declare himself free and dissociate himself from any such ideas. This same particular group, it exhibited a number of different kind of ideas, different tendencies. There was the one who went to regard him as an ilah. There were others who regarded him purely as afdalus sahaba, the best amongst the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, without saying anything negative about the rest of the Sahaba. Then of the same group again, there were those who would regard him not just as best of the Sahaba, but the one divinely appointed by Allah Ta'ala to take over the reins of the Ummah after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a divinely appointed Imam. And that has become mainstream Shiism. Within Shiism, there are all these various different ideas. There are those that would regard Ali ibn Abi Talib as a god, as the Aga Khani Shia do up to the present day. There are those that would regard him purely as an Imam appointed, still human, appointed by Allah Ta'ala, but with a rank that goes beyond the ranks of the Anbiya alayhi salam again. And all those, there would be those who associate this kind of position with him, but then start execrating and speaking ill of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. That was the one extreme. On the other extreme, there was another group. On that extreme, there was a group that was a direct offshoot of the efforts of Abdullah ibn Saba. The first group was also the offshoot of the efforts of Abdullah ibn Saba, those that would raise Ali ibn Abi Talib to a certain pedestal. Abdullah ibn Saba's efforts led to the spreading of a certain idea that we sit in judgment of our rulers. We decide when a ruler is good and when he is not good. We decide what is right and what is wrong. And when we feel that something is wrong, we take the initiative into our own hands. We march a Khalifa and kill the Khalifa. If we feel that something is not right, that the Khalifa has acted wrongly, and do as we feel should be done. This was an anarchist element in society. Anarchy, chaos. A group that says that we decide when something is wrong and then we step up to the issue and we do what we feel should be done. From their particular perspective, there seems to be merit in this idea. There's a group that does the right thing. The problem is that this group eventually takes in their opinions superior to the opinions of who? Of the men trained by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of those men who had spent time in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where? In Makkah, thereafter in Medina, in Badr, in Uhud, in Hunayn, in all of these battles. These latecomers to Islam would now be the ones who say, what do they know about deen? We know better. We know better about deen. Therefore, if we have judged this Khalifa to become a murtad, we've judged this Khalifa to be a criminal, we've judged this Khalifa to be X, Y, and Z, then we will do what deserves to be done to him. Abdullah ibn Saba's efforts led to these two streams of ideas within society. On the one hand, the one that says the Ahlul Bayt, and at the head of them Ali ibn Abi Talib have special rights, special status, special privileges. On the other hand, another group that says, forget Sahaba, forget Ahlul Bayt, forget anyone else. It's our opinion that counts. What we say is right, what we say is wrong, and we will take matters into our own hands as we see fit. In the second battle that Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi, in the first battle that Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib fought, it was against whom? It was against Sayyidina Aisha, Sayyidina Talha, Sayyidina Zubayr radiyallahu anhum and their followers outside of the city of Basra. That battle, as explained more than once before, was never intended to have been a battle. It was never intended to have been a battle. It was again on account of the internal machinations of Abdullah ibn Saba and his particular group that it eventually came out to be a battle. That battle was started by those parties who saw that if sulh comes about between these two parties, then we have failed in our task. And therefore they set about these surreptitious attacks from either side to the other in order to kickstart this war. And this war started and lasted the entire day. At the end of that day, there were the bodies of the Sahaba, bodies of hundreds of Muslims lying around, having become victims of that particular battle. On that day, now both elements will come to the fore. The one element comes and says that these people are kuffar. We have fought them. First of all, they broke their pledge of allegiance that they gave to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. So they are kuffar. Since they are kuffar, therefore we have the right to take spoils of war from them. When we find them, we kill them. When we kill them, then we take the spoils of war, the ghanima. We take it from them, that is our right. Sayyidina Ali makes an order. No injured person must be killed. He makes an order. Anyone fleeing from battlefield must be left alone. He should not be arrested. He should not be arrested, he should not be molested, he should not be touched at all. Now this element, the unruly, the chaotic, the anarchist element that says we want to do things our way, they come up to you and say, what are you talking about? This is what deen is all about. If you fight jihad, then you have prisoners, you treat prisoners in a particular way, you take the spoils of war, you kill them when you feel so. So he says, fine, if that is the case, then what do? You tell me which one of you is going to take Ummul Mu'mineen Sayyidah Aisha radiyallahu anha as the spoils of war. Who of you is prepared to do that? Now they stood back. They did not realize who they are up against. They are up against Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een. They are up against who? Those eminent companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who were unfortunate enough to have been trapped into this veil of obscurity, this sophisticated plan of misinformation that is spread around the Muslim world. They had been caught up in it, and now they will come, these latecomers to Islam, about whom Allah Ta'ala said yesterday that قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا, these desert dwellers, they say that we have iman. Allah Ta'ala says, قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. You are not a mu'min, you have no iman in your heart. Say, we have become Muslim. Don't say we have iman. So there Allah Ta'ala negated specifically their iman. It was these people and their followers afterwards that would now stand up in judgment against the rest of the ummah. The second battle that Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib fought was against Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, together with him Amr ibn al-As and a number of the Sahaba in Syria. Now, again comes up the issue, why would they go to war against the legitimate Khalifa? Why was there no such war against Abu Bakr? Why was there no such war against Umar or Uthman? Why now suddenly in time of Ali? Now let's just go back to our very first lecture. Originally, what did we say? The original point of departure between the Ahlul Sunnah and the Shia is the concept of Imamah. And in this concept of Imamah, what does it teach? It says that after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is a group of men, one after the other, who Allah appointed to lead the ummah. And anyone else who usurps that position and becomes a Khalifa instead of those appointed by Allah Ta'ala, they are kuffar out of the fold. But it has taken what? It has taken a number of years, 20-25 years to come to this point here. Up to this moment in time, there had been no noticeable objection. The Khilafah of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu anhu came with its events and it went. The Khilafah of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu came, and together with it all the events that occurred, and at the end of his life he was murdered by one particular person. There was no conspiracy as such yet that one can speak of. At the end of the 12 years of Sayyidina Uthman's rule only do we find this turbulence that eventually culminates in his death. But you found no one leading an army against the Khalifa. You found no one objecting against the legitimacy of his Khilafah. Now for the first time with Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, there is Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan in Sham, in Syria, and he says that no, I'm not accepting things as they are. Why is he doing it? You ask yourself from a Shia perspective, the Shia says, these people, the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, these people have been kuffar since day one already. They have been kuffar since the time of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman. They were just waiting for the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to take over the affairs. Barely did Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam die when they took over the affairs. Where? At Saqifa Bani Sa'ida. And they've been running the show all along. And what you're seeing now in Muawiyah is merely all of those ancient hatred, all of that ancient hatred against the Ahlul Bayt. Now only it's coming to the force. Why? Because before, who was the Khalifa? It was not of the Ahlul Bayt. Now since Ali is the Khalifa, Muawiyah's reason for opposing is because Ali is the problem. That is from their particular perspective. What do we see? We see that Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan sees his cousin Uthman ibn Affan murdered in cold blood in Medina. We see the web of conspiracy to such an extent that here Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib is unable to immediately take action against those who killed the Khalifa. He is unsure of how deep do the roots of this particular conspiracy go. He is unsure as to exactly how to go about at that moment. He wants to wait till he is strong enough, stable enough to take action against them. But at no moment did he say that we are not going to bring these people to justice. In fact, when they were just outside of Basra, while the battle was raging between themselves and the army of Sayyidah Aisha radiyallahu anha, they heard a tumult of voices coming at them from the side of Sayyidah Aisha's army. And Sayyidina Ali asked, what are these voices that I'm hearing? He says, that is Sayyidah Aisha radiyallahu anha making dua against the killers of Uthman. And all the people are saying Ameen. And then Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib raised his own hands and he asked Allah Ta'ala to curse the killers of Uthman, wherever they might be, mountains or valleys, land or sea, may Allah curse them. He was making use of the opportunity to show that he is not against what they are doing, what Sayyidah Aisha is calling for. He was taking the opportunity to show that if there are any of those within his own army, they will be brought to justice at some point or the other. But Muawiyah on the other hand sees Ali is not bringing them to justice. He says, my cousin has been murdered, something needs to be done. So, if one compares what happened in time of Abu Bakr, no one ever objected against his khilafah. Why not? Because there was no reason. There was no reason to. The khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab, no one objected because the previous khalifa was not murdered. Had the previous khalifa been murdered like that, there would have been a problem here. The khilafah of Sayyidina Umar, had the murderer gone scot-free, had the murderer, Abu Lu'lu'a, gone scot-free, then there would have been a problem with the khilafah of Sayyidina Uthman, if Sayyidina Uthman didn't bring him to justice immediately. But what was the eventual outcome of the murder of Sayyidina Umar? That person was immediately pursued by the Sahaba in the masjid. He fled and he stabbed several other people. Eventually when he was cornered, he murdered himself, he committed suicide. So that murderer, eventually his life came to an end. But the murderers of Sayyidina Uthman are going unpunished. And the fact that they're going unpunished is due to their strength. The strength of them and the support that they have. Where? All over the Muslim world. All over. It's not just here in Medina, it's all over. People, they have their supporters. So Muawiyah is seeing Ali is not bringing them to justice, and he's reasoning to himself, if you do not bring them to justice, then we will bring them to justice. So Ali says, you submit to me, I'm the Khalifa. He says, no, first want the killers to be undone. From here one can understand the genius of this, rather, the evil genius of this man called Abdullah ibn Saba. He threw the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum into such a situation that whether you go forward, whether you go backward, you lose both ways. Whatever you do, whichever way you move, it is damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're between the devil and the deep blue sea. Very difficult to negotiate, very difficult to navigate your route out of a problem such as that. Eventually these two armies march against one another. And for several days they do battle against one another. For several days the battle rages and rages and rages. Amr ibn al-As was the main advisor to Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And he eventually advises him, he says, I've got some advice, I've got a trick up my sleeve that we can use. Why? He had noticed something in the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib. What is that he noticed? They will fight very hard, but their hearts are not together. Their hearts are not together. There's division within the ranks of the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And the biggest problem in the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu, is the fact that they are not obedient. Remember the anarchist element that I spoke about? Those that do as they want to, they're the same people still in the army of Sayyidina Ali. They are still there, and all you need to do is insert a ruse. Throw a cat amongst those particular pigeons, and everything will be in uproar. Everything will suddenly, the entire playing field will change. So he said, let's do this. These are people who believe their own opinions to be superior to that of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, who believe their idea of deen, their idea of piety, their idea of what is right and what is wrong, their idea of righteousness, they believe that to be superior to that of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had predicted the coming of these people as well. People that if you look at your own salah compared to their salah, you will feel ashamed of your own salah. They read the Quran but it doesn't go beneath their throats. Why? What is the problem with them? As much salah as they make, as much outward piety as they seem to have, they are filled with that very same spirit of the original fellow who said that, خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. That arrogance of Iblis. I'm better than you. So all the piety in the world, all the salah and all the dhikr and all the, but the idea of arrogance and the idea of thinking yourself superior to those who Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam had praised. Anyway, this was the element that Amr ibn al-As sought to destabilize. So he said, let's do the following. Take the mushaf, copies of the Quran, tie it to the spears, tie it to spears. Take 2 spears or 4 spears, tie a mushaf to the top, carry it into battle. And you say, we're not coming for battle. We are saying that we are 2 Muslim armies killing one another. The Romans are behind us. We are killing one another. So let's come to a sulh. Let's come to reconciliation between ourselves. Let the Quran decide. Carrying the Quran into battle, telling your opponent, we've had enough. This cannot go on. Let the Quran decide. To whose sensitivities does that play? Those particular people who think they have a better idea of what the Quran says. So immediately they come to Sayyidina Ali, they say, no, we have to stop this war. Sayyidina Ali says, we have to continue this war, we're on the verge of winning. Say, no, you're not going to do this, we are going to stop this war. Why? Who knows better? Does Ali ibn Abi Talib know better? Or does the son of this desert Arab who became Muslim yesterday, doesn't know his deen properly, know better? In his mind, he knows better. And they are such a powerful faction within the army of Sayyidina Ali, that when they speak with a few 100,000 voices. Not just one man alone. So eventually, much against his will, he is forced to stop the war. He's forced to stop the war. Cannot fight when half your army want to walk away from the battlefield and say, let the Quran decide. How does the Quran decide? The Quran is the word of Allah. The Quran is sacred and holy. But the Quran does not speak of its own accord. It's not a DVD or a CD or a cassette player. It is text, which is the written record of Allah's word. It requires a human interpreter. And who will be the human interpreter? The one to whom Allah Ta'ala had given the capacity to interpret it. The one who received that capacity, that's Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the one who received that capacity from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that's the Sahaba Radiallahu Anhum. Someone else will now come, and this is a perennial problem with Islam, with Muslims rather. There's no problem with Islam, problem with Muslims. There's a continuous problem with Muslims. You know, the Quran says, and then I also give my view, and you also give your view, and my view is right, and your view is wrong. And I don't know the difference between an ism and a fi'l and a harf in Arabic language. I barely know the difference between a ba and a ta, but I can also say that this is my opinion. This is one of the reasons why this ummah is not going forward, because everyone has an opinion. Anyway, this was the problem Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu had. He had this problem. These people decide that no, the Quran will decide. How does the Quran decide? Anyway, we have to decide. So the two sides say that we will stop the war. And a year from now, we will send two persons from either party. There will be persons sent, negotiators from either side. They will sit, instead of Muslims decimating, killing one another, instead of whittling down our numbers all the time, let's rather have this thing settled by a negotiation. A year from now, two persons from either party will meet at a place called Dawmatul Jandal. At that time they will decide. What they decide, the rest of us will accept. Negotiations rather than battle. Now during those negotiations, remember, whatever we know about the past, how do we know about the past? What kind of records do we have? We have historical reports. Those historical reports are passed down through whom? They are passed down through human conduits, human narrators. And every human narrator is not necessarily a good narrator. Especially at a time like this. Now you must know, this is 3, 4, 5, 6 years of almost war non-stop. And the feelings are running high. And your partisanship and your support for your leader runs very, very high. And this comes after the death of the Khalifa. So as was outlined last week, it was a time of great emotional upheaval. And at the time of such emotional upheaval, it's very easy to find representations, versions of history that's not true to the original. So now you find certain versions of history. For example, they say the parties got together. And these things are recorded in the books of history. The parties get together. And from the side of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, he sent Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. It wasn't his intention to send Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. He wanted to send his cousin Abdullah ibn Abbas. But again, the anarchists in his army come together and say, we said that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Ali ibn Abi Talib says, I said Abdullah ibn Abbas. They say, but we said. Anyway, once again, Abu Musa, you go. From the side of Muawiyah comes Amr ibn al-As. Now the version of history goes as follows. The version of history says that they get together. And Amr ibn al-As and Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, they sit together before they now have the public declarations. And the two of them say, look, what do you think what should be done? And the one says, Amr ibn al-As says, well, I think I should declare that my candidate, that's Muawiyah, is no longer eligible for leadership. And Abu Musa says, well, I think I should declare the same. We should disqualify both of them and rather elect another leader for the ummah. Because these two have become the heads of two factions, where there's strong sentiment behind them as well. Rather leave that, let's get another candidate. Who do you have in mind? Abu Musa says, well, I am thinking of Al-Khair ibn Al-Khair, Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Al-Khattab. Let's rather go for someone like that. He can bring the ummah together. He's his father's son. Anyway, they decide, if that's what's to be done, let's go outside. Public declaration. So Abu Musa is allegedly told by Amr ibn al-As, you speak first, you are the senior here. So he speaks first and he says, I declare that my candidate Ali is no longer eligible for the Khilafah. I depose him from the Khilafah. And then the alleged version of history says, then Amr ibn al-As gets up and says, well, since you've removed your candidate, I put up my candidate. He is the candidate, let's him be our Khalifa. And Abu Musa says, what a deception. You have deceived me. Now this kind of story is ascribed to the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, tends to leave a bad flavor. What kind of person is this that would deceive the other? But the question is never asked, is that a valid version of history? Is that a valid version? Is the people who have transmitted that down to us, are they reliable persons? Secondly, did they receive it in a continuous chain of narration? These are not the questions asked. When someone jumps to conclusions today, then he simply says, but there it is in the books of history. Our approach, us the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, our approach is that we take historical material and we judge it in light of all those ayat in the Quran in which Allah Ta'ala speaks about the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. All of those ahadith, we don't discount that. We don't turn a blind eye to that and says, let's just look at what we have in front of us here. We look at the hadith in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about Abdullah, the son of Amr ibn al-As. Ni'ma ar-rajulu Abdullah wa Abu Abdullah wa Ummu Abdullah. What a good man is Abdullah ibn Amr, and his father is a good man, and his mother is a good person. We look at all of those ahadith in which these people have contributed to deen, all their contributions to deen, everything that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about them. We don't just discard that on the basis of a flimsy piece of evidence in a book of history and say, well, there it is the evidence, these are evil people. No, we take the holistic picture into consideration. Anyway, that version of history is the flawed version of history. Unfortunately, it has misled so many people. Their problem is their preparedness, their willingness to believe certain things. If those same things were said about people who they admire, and inshallah I intend to speak somewhat more about this later in this lecture, if those same allegations were made about people that they admire, they will say, how can you say such a thing? How can you ever make such an allegation? If someone says a similar thing about Imam Khomeini, then what do they say? How can you ever think something bad of such a great person? But did Allah Ta'ala say anything good about Khomeini? He might have been a good person, might have been a bad person. But when it comes to the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, Allah instructed us to make istighfar for them. Allah tells us that He is happy with them. Allah Ta'ala tells us that they are humul mu'minuna haqqa, the true believers. Therefore, what choice do we have but to entertain a good opinion about them? Fine. This particular negotiations that this place called Dawmatul Jandal are inconclusive. They go nowhere. But they had one important consequence. That one important consequence was that anarchist element in the army of Ali, again they had a problem. They always have a problem. Their problem now is, they tell Ali ibn Abi Talib, what right did you have to go and negotiate away the fact that you are the Amir al-Mu'mineen? You are the leader of the Ummah, isn't it? He says, yes. So what right do you have to take that position of leadership and go and negotiate at a negotiating table in Dawmatul Jandal? So while Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu used to be standing on his mimbar, delivering his khutbah out of the crowd somewhere, and we in Cape Town know this phenomenon quite well. The Imam is speaking in front, Astana Iman Ubaydayuka make remarks. Iman San Ubaydayuka say it's Anas. So we know this phenomenon, exactly the same phenomenon. Sayyidina Ali standing on the mimbar, delivering his khutbah, and someone will scream out to the crowd, Inil hukmu illa lillah. Hukm only belongs to Allah Ta'ala. This was, and Sayyidina Ali used to say what? Kalimatu haqqin urida biha al-batil. The word is true, it's a word of the Quran. Inil hukmu illa lillah. Hukm, that means rulership here, belongs to Allah alone. So what they were basically telling Ali is that this leadership was from Allah. Allah gave it to you. How could you give it away? How could you go and negotiate it away? So they say for that reason, many of them declared Ali also to be what? Ali is also kafir. Why is he kafir now? Because he had negotiated away something which Allah Ta'ala had given to him. Inil hukmu illa lillah. Rule and governorship and rulership only belongs to Allah Ta'ala. It's a true word. But what was intended? The intention was to destabilize society. Kalimatu haqqin urida bihal batil. True words spoken. And we often hear such true words spoken. Justice before peace and all. We hear these things being spoken. And urida bihal batil. What are the true intentions behind them? There are nefarious intentions behind them, not noble ones. Eventually this particular group, they cut themselves off. They withdraw from Kufa. They go to a place called Nahrawan. And they say, no, we can't stay with the Amir al-Mu'mineen, with a leader who negotiates his position of leadership away. What does he know about deen? We know better. Because Allah Ta'ala says, inil hukmu illa lillah. So he can't be our leader, we'll have to have our own leader. Sayyidina Ali comes to know about them. He sends Abdullah ibn Abbas, his cousin, to them and say, go and reason with these people. Go and speak to them, reason to them, bring them back into the fold. He goes to them and he speaks to them, and a few thousand of them come back. They realize that they were wrong and they come back. But there remains a hardcore group that says, no, by no means are we coming back. We know Islam better than you. So eventually Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib goes to war with them, and he decimates, he destroys their army at this place called Nahrawan. This was the third battle fought by Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib. In each of these battles you can see how the Ummah is splitting further and further apart. This group, they are called the Khawarij. Khawarij, plural of the word Kharij. And Kharij means ones who goes out. They've left what? They've left the Millah. They were together with the rest of the Ummah, now they've gone outside. They are on their own. They exist up to the present day. There were numerous different sects amongst the Khawarij. They existed once upon a time. In the present world there is only one particular group of the Khawarij that still left. They are called the Ibadiyya. The Ibadiyya are to be found in two places in the world. You'll find them in Oman, and you will find some of them in Algeria as well. A few of them in Algeria have survived, and a few of them in Oman. In Oman, the Ibadi madhab is the official madhab. The Ibadi madhab is the official madhab. They are the intellectual heirs and successors of the original group that broke away from Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib and whom he fought at Nahrawan. They remain in existence thereafter. They've maintained their existence in these two parts of the world. But this particular group of the Khawarij are probably the most moderate of the groups of the Khawarij. They are not as extreme as some of the others have been. Therefore they are the only one amongst all those various sects to have survived over 1,000 years. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu continues staying in Kufa thereafter. But now he is noticing certain things in society has changed. Within his army he had seen certain things, and now in Kufa he starts seeing them. He saw the Khawarij and he saw the Shia. He hears about people saying that Ali is afdal min Abi Bakr wa Umar. Now, in the time of Abu Bakr, in the time of Umar, no one had been saying that Ali is better than Abu Bakr and Umar. Even if he was considered as a candidate, no one ever considered him necessarily better than Abu Bakr and Umar. When it came to selection, when Abu Bakr was up there, everyone gave him their bay'ah. Very few had any hesitation in giving their bay'ah. Sayyidina Ali himself gave him his bay'ah. Not only did he give him his bay'ah, when a son was born to him, he named him Abu Bakr as well. Thereafter, Sayyidina Umar becomes the Khalifa. He has such love for this Umar, he gives him his own daughter in marriage, number one. Number two, he names his son after him. He has another son called Umar. And then thereafter, at the end of his death, he comes to, at the end of his life, when he's lying, having succumbed to the wounds inflicted upon him by the murderer Abu Lu'lu'a, Sayyidina Ali comes and says, Wallahi ma ala wajhi al-ardi ahadun ahabba ilayya min an alqa Allah bimithli sahifatih min hadha al-musajjar. There's no one on the face of the earth with whose books of deeds I would more love to meet Allah Ta'ala than this person lying covered here. This was the relationship that he had with Sayyidina Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. When Sayyidina Umar wanted to go and join the campaigns in Iraq, when the campaigns were going difficult, we weren't making headway, Sayyidina Umar said, I think I must go there myself. He said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, don't go. Stay in Medina. You send Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, send some of the other generals. If we lose you on the battlefront, the Majus, the Persians will take heart from it. They will rally. They will say, we've killed the head of the Arabs. And they might come back and say, Amir al-Mu'mineen, we cannot see you lose your life. You stay in Medina. Let the others go and do the fighting. If this was an enemy of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, he said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, please go. But no, he did not say any such thing. And thereafter, what are we saying? That in the time of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, there was no one who was objecting. There was no one who was saying that Ali is better than Abu Bakr and Umar. In fact, in the time of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, when Sayyidina Uthman was elected, remember what Abdul Rahman ibn Auf did? He went around to every group of people sitting in Medina. What do you think? I'm giving you two candidates, Ali or Uthman? Ali or Uthman? And he says, everyone told him we'll have Uthman. So at that time too, there was no idea that Ali is better than Uthman. No, everyone was, Abu Bakr is the best, Umar thereafter, and then comes Uthman. And none of this is denigrating, none of this is intended to be offensive to Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. Had it been offensive, had we hated him, then we wouldn't have had him as the fourth best of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. We would have said something like some other people have said about him. Some of the evil things that they've said about him. He remains beloved to us. We name our children after him. He remains the son-in-law of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He remains Asadullah al-Ghalib, Imam al-Mashariq wal-Magharib, Amir al-Mu'minin Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu. He's beloved to our hearts, he's very dear to us. But no one before that had said that Ali is better than Abu Bakr and Umar. Now Abdullah ibn Saba's web of deceit had led certain people to say that Ali is Allah, and led certain other people to say that Ali is better than Abu Bakr and Umar. He realizes the danger of a statement such as that. And he says, if there is any man that claims me to be better than Abu Bakr and Umar, jaladtuhu jald al-muftari. I will punish him in a manner that we punish a liar, a calumniator. He'll get 40 lashes, he'll get 80 lashes from me. Not just because I'm better than Abu Bakr and Umar, but for what it holds in for the future. It will start off by saying, Amir al-Mu'min, you're better than Abu Bakr and Umar. Where will it end up? It ends up where it's ended up today. Where people are no longer saying that Abu Bakr and Umar is also good, but Ali is better. It's no longer just that. It is Ali is good and Abu Bakr and Umar the worst of the scum under the sun. That's where it's ended up. And therefore he took such steps against them. Should I hear of a person saying that I'm better than Abu Bakr and Umar, then I will punish him as a calumniator, as a liar. On the other hand, those that said he was Allah, what did he do with them? He burned them with fire. Why? Because this is shirk. This is the worst kind of shirk. Such shirk was not even done with our beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And you come and say that Ali is Allah, na'udhu billahi min dhalik. But he saw this happening in society. He saw the Khawarij on the other hand starting to become to secede from society, create their own element, spread anarchy and chaos. He saw them saying, Inil hukmu illa lillah, and he fought them. He saw the early prototype Shia starting to say things that Ali is Allah, that Ali is better than Abu Bakr and Umar. He saw it and he tried to contain the situation. Eventually, the Khawarij who had been defeated by Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib at Nahrawan, they decide that there's only one way to correct things in this ummah. Things have gone bad, very, very bad. Muslims are fighting Muslims. And look at these Sahaba, they say. These are the Khawarij. Look at these Sahaba. These are supposed to be the companions of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at how they are fighting with one another. There's only one thing that we can do. Assassination. When assassination steps in, then chaos is reaching its peak. Getting closer and closer to the ultimate culmination of chaos in society. So they appoint 3 assassins. Because they say there are 3 heads that need to roll. That of Ali, that of Muawiyah, and that of Amr ibn al-As. All 3 of these people must be removed from society. Once we have removed these 3, then society will come right. We see a similar thing happening in the world around us today as well. In the Muslim world, these spates of assassination right now in Pakistan. Just yesterday, an alim passed away about a week ago, was attacked whilst on his way driving to court. He had been a member of the group called Sipai Sahaba, the defenders of the Sahaba in Pakistan. And then on his way to court with his 2 young sons in his car and another young son following in a motorcycle, he was attacked. His son at the back was shot and killed. He and his other son were shot and wounded. Yesterday expired of his wounds, rahimahullah. This kind of thing is continuing in the Muslim world. And by no means am I claiming that these kind of assassinations are one-way traffic alone. Despite those that would misrepresent what we've stated in this forum time and again. We are being accused of the fact that we threaten violence against the Shia. Not one moment was violence ever threatened in this particular forum. Those who have been here from the beginning will know about that. What we do say, however, that violence just tends to have a presence where Sunnis and Shias come together. After a while, the issues are of such a nature that there is a spiral into violence. We want to prevent such violence from happening, and therefore we want to curb the spread of Shiism in the society of ours. But never will we threaten violence against the Shia. That is not in our interest nor in theirs. In other parts of the world, however, we see it happening on a daily basis, where things are spiraling out of control, and you find assassinations the order of the day. So people decide we are going to remove these 3 leaders. 3 assassins are appointed. The one appointed to kill Amr ibn al-As fails in his mission. The one appointed to kill Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan fails in his mission. The one appointed to kill Sayyidina Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu succeeds in his mission. He murders our beloved Amir al-Mu'mineen Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu as he is on his way to the Salah of Fajr. And he used to say that, my Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had informed me that the time will come حَتَّى تَخْتِبُ مِنْ هَذِهِ when my beard will run wet with the blood that's coming out of my throat. That will happen. And he is murdered by the assassin. His assassin is caught. He is a person, when they catch him, Sayyidina Ali says, don't torture him. He must be put to death, but don't torture him. At that moment too, the justice of Ali ibn Abi Talib, if he killed me, he must simply be killed. Cut off his neck, yes, but don't torture him. Why? That's not part of our Sharia. When they are going to kill him, they cut off his body parts. Why? He's making fasad fil ard. So, cut off his right arm and left leg and things like that. In any event, then they threaten to cut off his tongue. When they're cutting off his arm and his leg, he doesn't show the least amount of fear. When they come to his tongue, his name was Abdul Rahman ibn Muljam. When they come to his tongue, suddenly he shivers. So what's wrong? Your arm, you showed no fear. You weren't upset by the cutting of your leg, but your tongue, he says, you know why? Because this tongue never stops making the dhikr of Allah. This was the kind of people, on the one hand, they are so deep into the practice of their religion. On the other hand, they think nothing of shedding the holy blood of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu. These kind of elements are still there in society. They represent the same kind of thought that has been there all along. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu departs from this world and joins his 3 companions in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And thereafter, what happens to this ummah? Sayyidina Ali is asked before his death, appoint a Khalifa. Appoint a Khalifa. This brings us back again to the concept of Imamah. There's no need for the appointment of a Khalifa from a Shia perspective. There's no need. Why? Allah has already appointed Hassan as the leader behind him. But listen to the answer that Sayyidina Ali gives, and then see whether it fits in with the theories of the Shia. He says, إِنْ أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِأُمَّةِ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ خَيْرًا فَسَيَجْمَعُهُمْ عَلَى خَيْرِهِمْ. If Allah wants good to happen to this ummah, He will bring the ummah together on the best man that's amongst them. He will bring them together under the leadership of the best amongst them. In other words, I'm not going to appoint anyone for you. You select someone. The ummah has the right to elect his leader. But now the ummah is still divided. There's Muawiyah still in Syria. There's Ali ibn Abi Talib's army still here in Kufa. So who will they select? Amongst themselves they then select his eldest son, Amir al-Mu'mineen Sayyidina al-Hasan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu. Now the next step is, the wars that his father had undertaken against the Syrians must go on, because the Syrians still haven't submitted. You know what has happened now? The whole idea about the killers of Uthman, everyone had lost track about that. Why? There's a new fight now. There's a new fight. It's the Syrians against the Iraqis. It's the people of Kufa against the people of Damascus. What do we do now? The ball game has shifted. Few are those who would even think of where are the killers of Uthman. Why? Because the ummah has been embroiled in all of these wars. Sayyidina Hassan ibn Ali marches with his army to meet with Muawiyah in battle once again. But as he is marching to this battle, he thinks to himself that for 4, 5, 6 years we've gone on fighting one another. And who gains? On our borders, not very far from here, a few 100 kilometers away from here, who is sitting there? The Romans are sitting there watching what we are doing. They're seeing how we are fighting one another, destroying our own strength. And how long will it be before one of them steps in and says, we have destroyed ourselves? The flower of the Muslim army has been destroyed, of 2 Muslim armies. Who will be there to defend the widows? Who will be there to defend the children if these 2 armies clash with one another constantly, like 2 mountains clashing with one another, destroying one another? And he decides that enough. Enough is enough. He sends a message to Muawiyah. says, why don't we rather negotiate this matter? You and I come together and we discuss it. Again, the element of what? The unruly element. There are those in his army, he is the leader. He's suffering from the same problem that his father had suffered amongst his followers. The followers know better than the leader. They come to him, how on earth could you ever contemplate negotiating with a person as bad as him? And they come to him and they call him all kinds of names. Before it used to be, Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now they come to him, Assalamu alayka ya Mubir al-Mu'mineen. Oh, you destroyer of the Mu'mineen. This is the kind of things they come and tell him. Once he was physically attacked by these followers of his. These own followers who claimed themselves, and now for the first time, in the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the idea, the concept of a Shia for the first time came out. What is the Shia? Supporters of Ali. If you now look back to the Khilafah of Ali and the way that he had to fight against various different parties, you can understand that he had supporters. And those supporters naturally call themselves the Shia of Ali. Those Shia of Ali now, they're following his son Hassan. When Hassan makes a decision which does not please them, what do? They're almost like politicians and followers of political parties in our own country. If Mbek is no longer a good leader, then what do we do with him? We throw him out and we bring Zuma. And what are we doing to Zuma right now? Getting rid of him as well. So similarly there, Ali wasn't good enough, and now his son Hassan is doing something. What does he know? We know better than him. This has always been the story with the Shia. With the Shia, we know Deen better than what they know it. The Deen, the thing called a Ja'fari madhab, it's got nothing to do with the Ahlul Bayt radiyallahu anhum. It is those people who would ascribe things to the Ahlul Bayt and say this is the Deen of the Ahlul Bayt. Which is why there's such a lot of contradiction inside it. Every hadith has another hadith which contradicts it when they start ascribing these hadith to their imams. Why? Because they know better than their imams. The story that I've told maybe 2 or 3 times already, when Zayd ibn Ali went to Kufa and he met the Shia there now. By this time the Shia had already developed, this was now 100 years later, developed into a fully fledged group with their own particular identity. And he comes to them, he was the first of the imams of the Ahlul Bayt, of the members of the Ahlul Bayt to actually come to Kufa and see what's happening. All the others sitting in Medina. He sees them, they are ascribing teachings to his own father which he never knew of. He says, my father was so kind to me that he would feed me and I would sit on his lap. And then the food was too hot to place in my mouth. He would blow on it and wait for it to cool and then he puts it into my mouth. That was my father's kindness with me. He didn't want the food to burn my mouth. Do you think these things that you are teaching the people, you're saying my father is an imam and he's appointed by Allah and all of these things, and Ahlul Bayt has special status, and if you don't believe these things you're going to Jahannam. Do you think my father wouldn't have taught me these things? Because if he didn't teach me these things, I'm going to go to Jahannam. He didn't want food to burn my mouth. Do you think you want the fire of Jahannam to burn my body? And they had an answer, and what was the answer? They say, well, your father knew if he was going to teach you these things that you would reject them. So he rather didn't teach it to you, so he can say on the Qiyamah, Ya Allah, my son didn't know. And this was now the Shia making up things and ascribing it to the Ahlul Bayt. This is what the Ja'fari madhab, this is what Tashayyu Ithna Ashari Shi'ism is all about. And even, so now Hassan ibn Ali decides we can't go on like this. He comes together with Muawiyah and they decide. Or rather, before I come to that, when he decides to make peace with Muawiyah, what do they tell him? They say, you are the destroyer of the mu'mineen. He says, Wallahi la Muawiyatu khayrun li minkum. Muawiyah would be better to me than you. Because you are people, no obedience to a leader. You know what? Muawiyah's cause was the wrong cause. Ali's cause was the right cause. Muawiyah's army was an obedient army. Ali's army was a disobedient army. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib himself said that if I had one man from Muawiyah's army for every 10 of you, I would have been better off. These were the people all along who had been claiming what? We are the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. But they know better than the Ahlul Bayt. Anyway, so Hassan tells him that Muawiyah would be better to me than what you are. He goes to Muawiyah, they negotiate. What will they do? Peace will be brought about between these two parties. How will peace be brought about? Muawiyah, you can become the Khalifa. And when you die, then Hassan will become the Khalifa. And everyone shakes hands on that and everyone is happy except for those malcontents. Those people who have their own ideas about deen. The Shia and the Khawarij. The Shia on the one hand say, what right would Hassan have? This is a right given to him by Allah. What right does he have to give it away? And on the other hand there's the Khawarij who say all of you are kafir in any event. So, when these two great parties come together, this was the fulfillment of the great prophecy of our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. One day he had his son Hassan on his lap, and he said that, Inna ibni hadha sayyidun. This son of mine is a leader of men. This son of mine is the leader of men. لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ أَن يُصْلِحَ بِهِ بَيْنَ فِئَتَيْنِ عَظِيمَتَيْنِ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Soon the day will come when through this son of mine, Allah will bring about reconciliation between two great groups of Muslims. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't call them kafirs. They were Muslims, they were mu'mins. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, all that was required, sulh must be brought about. In the year 41 after the hijrah, these two personalities get together. Sayyidina Hassan places his hand in the hands of Muawiyah, and he says, I give you my pledge of allegiance, you are now Amir al-Mu'mineen. Peace is restored to the ummah from this day onwards. Now last week and perhaps the week before, I said something. I said, if you have to ask me who was right and who was wrong, Ali was right, Muawiyah was wrong. Muawiyah was how wrong? He was a rebel against legitimate authority. He was a rebel. There's no two ways about that. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam described them as such. What did he say? وَيْحَ Ammar. He said, Ammar ibn Yasir, تَقْتُلُهُ الْفِئَةُ الْبَاغِيَةُ. The rebellious group will kill him. Ammar ibn Yasir was killed with Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu's army. On the day of Siffin, he was killed by the army of Muawiyah. That hadith there tells you what? The army of Muawiyah was the rebellious army. There's no two ways about it. Ali ibn Abi Talib was right, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan was wrong. However, he was wrong for how long? He was wrong for how long? Until Sayyidina Hassan placed his hands in his hands and said that, you are now the Amir al-Mu'min, I accept you as the leader of the Muslims. Is he still a Baghi up to the present day? Is he still a rebel? Shall we still continue this? It reminds me of a story someone tells me. He says 3 Buddhist monks were walking one day, and they come to a river, and I'm cutting the story very short. They come to a river, they see a woman standing there. So she wants to cross the river. So one of the Buddhist monks picks her up and carries her across the river, puts her down and continues walking. And as they're walking further, the other 2 are looking at him and giving those glances. How could you do such a thing? You're a monk after all. How can you pick up a woman, carry her over the river? And a kilometer or 2 further on, he asks him, but brothers, why are you looking at me? He says, how could you pick up a woman and carry her across the river? He says, I picked her up for 2 minutes, carried her across the river and put her down. It seems to me the 2 of you are still carrying her in your minds. This is the problem with this ummah of ours. Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu was amongst those who fled on the day of Uhud, but Allah had forgiven him. The Shia still haven't forgiven him, because Allah's mercy is much greater than theirs, of course. And here, Muawiyah ibn Sufyan, we are honest enough to say he was not right, he was the rebel. Sayyidina Imam Shafi'i radiyallahu anhu ardah. So Imam Shafi'i was writing the chapter of fiqh on how to deal with rebels. How does the Muslim state deal with rebels? And where does he draw from? He draws from how did Sayyidina Ali treat the army of Muawiyah on the other side? How did he treat them? So some of the ulama at the time, they said, no, Imam Shafi must be a Shia. He must be a Shia. Why? Because he said Muawiyah was wrong. This was Yahya ibn Ma'in, great Imam. He was upset. How can Imam Shafi speak about Muawiyah like this? Muawiyah being a rebel. So he went to his friend, his very good friend, also a student of Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And he tells Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Shafi is a Shia. Why is he a Shia? Because he says Muawiyah is a Baghi, is a rebel. So Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal tells him that if he should not use those examples, who else must he use an example? Because that was the first case in the history of Islam that rebellion had occurred. And Amir al-Mu'mineen Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib is the one who teaches us how to deal with those rebels. And what did he teach us about them? He said they are not kuffar, they are not munafiqeen, they are ikhwanuna baghaw alayna, our brothers, but they rebelled against us. And when your brother has rebelled against you, and then he comes to you and says that, look, let's make peace, he is not a rebel any longer. He is not a rebel any longer. This is where we the Ahlul Sunnah stand. We say for the entire duration of the Khilaf of Sayyidina Ali, Muawiyah was the rebel, his cause was the wrong one. But the year that the 2 groups came together, the year what we call Amul Jama'ah, the year of unity, that year he ceased being the Baghi, the rebel, and that year he became Amir al-Mu'mineen, Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu. From that moment onwards, who are the ones who then established the unity of the ummah after it had been driven apart, after it had been destroyed by the murder of Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu? It was Hassan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, it was Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. From that moment onwards, for 20 years thereafter, Muawiyah would remain the Khalifa. For 20 years he would remain, and it was a time of prosperity. And it was a time of Islam was on the advance once again. Islam was making gains once again after they stood still for 5 years. And for 5 years of prosperity, Muawiyah ruled as Amirul Mu'mineen Muawiyah. When we speak today about unity, which unity is that? The unity that was destroyed with the murder of Sayyidina Uthman, and the unity that was restored through the sulh, the reconciliation between Hassan and Muawiyah. That is the unity that we should go back to. No ill-conceived unity that we think of today just for ad hoc purposes. Here and there we have a little bit of unity here and a little bit of unity there, and behind the scenes we are doing everything to destroy that supposed unity. Now, much of the debates and discussions between the Shia and Ahlul Sunnah have to do with personality. I mentioned this. People are ever so ready, certain people, to say something bad about the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, willing, when the least bit of flimsy information, the flimsiest of historical information is given to them, the Sahabi did something wrong, they jump on that bandwagon. When someone says something similar about their own admired persons, when they speak about Khomeini, when they speak about the Iranian state right now, say, how could you ever speak ill about people such as this? You know, the same kind of allegations, the same kind of accusations that these people make against Abu Bakr and against Umar and against Uthman, those very same allegations can be made about those who are ruling the land of Iran right now at this moment in time as well. Iran has not just been a success story. Iran at this moment, just a few weeks ago, what was happening there? The internet was blocked out. No news was going in or coming out. Why? Because there were riots. And just after 1979, all the instability and all the murders of prominent people, especially the Sunni ulama in Iran at that time, how are we to look at all of that? They're going to tell you that Muawiyah was guilty in his khilafah of killing Hujr ibn Adi, very good Muslim person he was. We can say similar things about Ahmad Mufti Zada, Abdul Malik, Mullah Zada, and a whole list of ulama of Iran who have been killed over the years. If you make certain excuses and say, well, the state of Iran had to do these kind of things, they had to do so, why don't we make those excuses for the Sahaba radiallahu anhum? Why when it comes to the Sahaba, we prepare to say that no, those are evil. But when the Iranian state does it, then we say, there are reasons why they do these things. They accuse the Sahaba radiallahu anhum of embezzling funds and taking from the public treasury, right at this, and appointing their own children and their own cousins and brothers to sensitive positions. Hashimi Rafsanjani was the president or president of Iran for several years. His son gets appointed to a very lucrative position. Very lucrative position where in a short space of time, after a short while, he gets accused of having embezzled something to the tune of $2 million. So you've been saying the Sahaba radiallahu anhu embezzled money and now you're embezzling money yourself. He responds by saying what? He's saying, you're accusing me of embezzling money. Look at Ahmadinejad himself. Ahmadinejad, he says, when he was mayor of Tehran, he embezzled 340 million 2 months. So, and then they come to certain other things. They say, Sayyidina Umar banned mut'ah. Hashimi Rafsanjani himself, he faced a problem in Iran. What was the problem that he faced in Iran? There was something like 750,000 of mut'ah orphans in Iran. 250,000 or 750,000 mut'ah orphans, where the fathers had made mut'ah with the mothers and absconded thereafter. Who do they become wards of the state? The state has to look after them. So he said that if people don't know how to make mut'ah, then we ban mut'ah. You can ban mut'ah, but if Sayyidina Umar does it, then you say he's an evildoer. But you can do the same? There are several other similar instances. You see what? The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaves this world. The Sahaba radiallahu anhu had to stand up and take his task further and build the Islamic state and spread the da'wah of Islam. And when you're in government, then you're going to have your detractors. You'll never be able to please everyone. There's never been a government that has had everyone's approval. So the Shia could sit and theorize on the outside because they didn't have a government. For over 1,000 years they had no government. And then comes 1979 and they have a government. Suddenly you find that they are killing off the opponents here. What was it? Hussein Ali Muntaziri. Ayatollah Hussain Ali Muntaziri was Khomeini's designated successor. Khomeini's designated successor, who became so upset with the amount of extrajudicial killings that were taking place, that were being done in the name of the Iranian government, that he started criticizing it. So Khomeini told him, you are no longer my successor, I remove you from the position whatsoever. He died a few weeks ago. While we are busy with our lectures here, he died a few weeks ago. You could barely attend his funeral. The state don't want anything to do with him. If the Sahaba radiallahu anhu had done something like that, what would they have said? Look at these evil people. But if those who never had an opportunity to run the government now get a government in their hands and they start doing certain things, the Iranian state used to make a lot out of the fact that they had cut ties with apartheid South Africa immediately upon the success of their revolution. Right now it comes out, Mark Rich was this businessman, oil salesman that was fronting for the Iranian government and selling oil to apartheid South Africa all these years. Now you might say, well, they needed to do so because they were also pariahs. They needed to do these things behind the scenes. The willingness of people to make excuses when it comes to those whom they admire on the one hand, and the unwillingness to make those same excuses, to have that same tolerance when it comes to those whom they might not admire, but whom Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved. That is the problem where we stand today. If our youth are able to overcome these particular little obstacles of being just, of being objective in the way that they view personalities in history and the way they view issues in our history, and treat it with the same kind of tolerance that we've been speaking of, inculcated, and the basis of which is laid by the Quran and the Sunnah, then we will not be sitting with problems of this kind. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه والتابعين. Does Mawlid originate from the Fatimids in Egypt, and can I please clarify the practice today if so? Well, it is said to originate from the Fatimids. In the world of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, its earliest history goes back to somewhere in the 5th century, where a certain king, Al-Malik al-Muzaffar Qayqubad, was the first. He was a great mujahid, and he had fought with Salahuddin against the Crusaders. And he had been one of those who had popularized the notion of celebrating the day of the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before that, the only other reference to be found to the particular celebration of the 12th of Rabiul Awwal as a birthday of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is said to be with the Fatimids. As for clarifying the practice today, it's all a matter of who do you ask. If you're going to ask me, I'm going to give you a certain opinion. You're going to ask something else, I'm going to give you a different opinion. So whose opinion do you want? Mine? At another. Here we are busy with Shias, not with Mawlid, inshallah.
The Sayyidina Ali had been appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Was appointed, divinely appointed. What is the consequence of that kind of belief? And according to the Shias, if we object or reject to that, what's our position with the Shias are concerned?
Idea of divine appointment, when it comes to the Shia and what do they actually believe and so on, there are two ways of going about this. The one is that we speak to the Shia person in front of us and say, what do you believe about it? Because like many of us do, many of them know very little about their religion. They won't know all the details. When we study Shiism, we study it from its literature. We study it from its literature, we get a certain impression there. Can I take all of that and apply to every individual Shia person? There are many of them that are misled. There are many of them that do not even know enough about their deen and have been taught a certain version of it, not all of it. So, when a person says divinely appointed, someone can even say that Abu Bakr is divinely appointed by Allah Ta'ala. How divinely appointed? Divine appointment can come in a number of different ways. We can even say that our president of the country was divinely appointed in the sense that Allah Ta'ala had ordained this person must be president. So what do you mean by divine appointment? If you mean Allah Ta'ala predestined it, Allah Ta'ala had set it out like that, then that's 100% correct as far as, appointments here would be concerned. But if you mean thereby an appointment in the same way that Allah Ta'ala appointed Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the Rasul of this ummah, then that would have certain repercussions. The repercussions that would come forth from there is not so much what would happen if you accept it. The problem is what happens to those who reject it. Now, classical Shiism, as expressed in the classical literature, they make no bones about this fact. If you reject it, it is as bad as rejecting the nubuwwah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is why they have very little compunction in saying classical Shiism, that is, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum were out of the fold of Islam, because they rejected the Imam of Ali ibn Abi Talib in that sense. There's one thing about contemporary Shia. Do we rush into giving a statement of kufr on them? As far as possible. If something that someone says has 99 ways in which it can be kufr and one way it can be still within the fold of Islam, let's still regard him within the fold of Islam. It's not our task to make people kafir. When does the person become a kafir? When he makes himself a kafir by denying such a part of deen which is undeniable. But for as long as there remains a possibility that he is within the fold, then we accept him as such, but that doesn't mean that we make our mimbars available to them to use as they want to. We make our mihrabs available, all our platforms. No. The fact that we still say he's a Muslim doesn't mean he's the best of Muslims that ever were. No. It means there's still something wrong with him, but not just wrong enough for him to go outside of the fold. There's a very, the kind of issues associated with his belief might well eventually take him out of the fold, which is why we will still try and hold him in, call him closer, inform him of the dangers of what he's into and all about. But until such time as his kufr hasn't become clear-cut, we will not go ahead and give that statement of kufr on him. Imam Dhahabi rahmatullahi alayhi in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala writes about the Shia. Now remember one thing, when we speak about the Shia, there's not only one color, there's a whole kaleidoscope of colors. You'll find one person is a Shi'i very, very lightly. His tashayyu' only amounts to the fact that he loves Ali more than what he loves Uthman. He loves Uthman too, but he just happens to love Ali a bit more than what he loves Uthman. And another person, his Shi'ism is that his Ali is his Allah. No, there's worlds between these two positions. Both those positions are qualified as Shia. So when we speak about the Shia, exactly what kind of Shia? Yes, Ithna Ashari Shi'ism happens to be the mainstream one. That's the one that we've got to do with here. But within Ithna Ashari Shi'ism, there's a whole lot of different ideas as well. So when a person makes when we discuss the idea, we can by all means say an idea of this nature, very, very dangerous, can take you out of the fold of Islam. When it comes to the person, until such time as he doesn't clearly subscribe to that idea with his consequences and say, well, I accept those consequences and I say that all of those people are out of the fold of Islam, that's the moment when he has taken himself out of the fold of Islam. Question is, do the Shia have a different Quran than ours? Again, it depends upon where you look for the answer. You go to the ulama of the Shia today, you ask them, they get offended by the question. How could you ever even think that we have a different Quran? You go to the books of the Shia, on the other hand, you get a completely different answer. So, it's almost, a Jehovah's Witness, they don't believe that Jesus is God. Jesus is a man or he's a special, but he's not God as such. So you go to him, is Jesus God? He's upset. How can you ever say Christians believe this? You go to the books of the Christians and go to the Catholics and they do believe it. So there is this dichotomy that you get when you ask them and you look at their books. Therefore they don't like the idea that we actually look at their books, because we find certain things in there that are going to be very, very problematic to them. This, for many, many centuries, while Shiism was existing in obscurity in their own particular parts of the world, they had no problem with stating it very clearly that they have a different Quran. Many of the ulama have stated it in the past. Then, in the past, some of them had stated that no, they accept the present Quran as a valid and correct one. Then as time went on, those who said that we accept the present Quran, their numbers increased, and the numbers of those honest enough to say that we don't accept the present Quran, their numbers decreased. By no means can we say all the ulama of the Shia today accept the Quran as is. The Shia, Ithna Ashari Shia, divided into two groups. The two groups are called the Akhbari and the Usuli. This division is only about 300 years old, not very, very old. Only about 400 years old. The Akhbaris, they generally have no qualms about saying the present Quran is corrupted. So, we have no qualms about saying that they're outside of the fold of Islam. The others say that no, we accept the Quran. Well, I will say from my side, welcome. You accept the Quran, I appreciate that. My problem is just how do you account for all of those things in your books? Now that's their problem. They need to give me an answer on that. I said it's their problem, they need to give us an answer on it. Just one other thing to it, they have certain answers. They will tell us that all of those ahadith are unauthentic ahadith. Now then we ask the question, when did you discover that? How come all your ulama in history all along said it's authentic hadith? Now you came to discover that's unauthentic. So how much else of your deen has been resting upon unauthentic sources as well? When they start asking these questions, then we're hitting close to the root. And as closer to the closer we get to the root, the more upset they're going to get. Because eventually it means only one thing: abandon Shiism. Abandon Shiism. If you can abandon Shiism on the issue of the Quran, if you can accept the fact that all those thousands of ahadith on the issue of the Quran are unauthentic, then you can actually say all those ahadith on the issue of imamah are also not authentic. And there is no cornerstone as central to Shiism as is imamah. This is not something which I'm sucking out of my thumb. Mullah Baqir Majlisi, one of the chief Shia scholars of the Safavid era, the author of the monumental Bihar al-Anwar, makes direct reference to this in his book Mir'atul Uqul, the Sharh of Usul, the commentary on Usul al-Kafi, where he says that the ahadith on the issue of the Quran being interpolated and changed, they are mutawatir. In other words, they've reached the highest level of mass transmission. And if you would accept, or if you reject all of them, then you can just as well reject all of the ahadith of imamah. But that statement was made at a time when the Shias were ruling the country, the Ahlul Sunnah had been practically exterminated, and they were on a high, on an all-time high. They probably couldn't think of a time when they would need to make friends with the Ahlul Sunnah once again. Now that time has come, and now I very much welcome it when a Shia tells me I accept the Quran. But all that I don't want him to do after that is to ever think that his acceptance of the Quran is free from problems. It's not free from problems. It's fraught with problems if he's going to be honest about it, as I've outlined now.
When there is a mixture in the Quran, if they accept the Quran as is, do they also believe there are parts of the Quran that are missing?
This thing of some parts of the Quran being missing, well, now many of us might have heard the idea of 10 missing ajza and so on. That idea of 10 missing Jews, that's an idea that's very prominent with the Ismaili Agha Khani Shia. They speak about specifically 10 missing ajza. As far as the Ithna Asharis are concerned, yes, they do have in their books hadith which indicate that there are certain things which are missing from the Quran. What they deny, they say there are no insertions into the Quran. Whatever is there in the Quran, that is Quran. Nothing has been added to it. Has there been any subtractions from it? Yeah. Classically, the bulk of the scholarship admitted the fact that there's been things taken away. And I've given some examples in the past. Some things taken away and some things changed. Words changed here and there. I've given some examples to refresh our memories. يَا أَيُّهَا الرَّسُولُ بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ وَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ فَمَا بَلَّغْتَ رِسَالَتَهُ. They say no, that's not how the ayah was. يَا أَيُّهَا الرَّسُولُ بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ فِي عَلِيٍّ. So that fi Ali, they say that was there, it's not there any longer. And you know what they will do? They say if you go and look in Durrul Mansur of Imam Suyuti, you will find a hadith in your own Sunni books, which have the same kind of thing. بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ فِي عَلِيٍّ. How do we the Ahlul Sunnah account for it? We say very, very easily. You go to the source in which that hadith is to be found. You look through its isnad, you will find it comes to a Shia Rawi. It comes to a Shia narrator. So very understand, we know exactly where it's coming from. It's something that has spilled over from your side to our side. If it's smelling not so nice on this side, it's because something has come over. It's not homegrown. It's imported. And we all know the ayah, كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. The Shia say, no, it's not ummah. No, you remember think about this ayah saying, you are the best of ummahs. Now, if you're a Shia, you think the best of ummahs, they usurp the khilaf of Ali, they kill Hussein, they do all these terrible things, they hurt Fatima. How can they ever be khayra ummah? So they say, no, the ayah is not for khayra ummah. The ayah is kuntum khayra a'imma. You, the Ahlul Bayt, are the best of imams, not the best of ummahs any longer. And I can go on and on quoting ayat such as these things are to be found in their books. One of their contemporary scholars who died in the early 90s, he was the leading Shia scholar of Iraq. At the moment, his student, he is the leading Shia scholar there, Sayyid Ali Sistani. Ali Sistani's teacher was Abul Qasim al-Khoi. Abul Qasim al-Khoi wrote a monumental book on the tafsir of the Quran, and in there he has dealt with this issue of tahrif, of interpolation of the Quran as well. And he's got two answers. I said the Shias have to answer the existence of all these ahadith. He's got two answers to them. He says some of those reports are unauthentic, and we visited that answer already. The other side of it, he says, these things are not revelation, but rather interpretation. They're not revelation from Allah, in other words, they're not Allah's words, but it's the interpretation that the Imam gives to the ayah. So there's additions. بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ فِي عَلِيٍّ. Say, well, that has got nothing to do. That's not Quran, but that's the interpretation of the Quran. It is not tanzeel, but it is ta'weel. How much of an interpretation could it have been? You know, if Allah Ta'ala wanted to tell Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ, convey what has been revealed to you from Allah, from your Rabb, about Ali, then Allah would have said about Ali. It doesn't require anyone to come afterwards and insert the name of Ali. If Allah wanted the name of Ali to be in the Quran, it would have been there. The name of Zayd, the adopted son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is in the Quran. فَلَمَّا قَضَى زَيْدٌ مِنْهَا وَطَرًا. That's with regard to the marriage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Zainab bint Jahsh. If the issue of imamah is so much more important than the marriage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the name of Ali would have been in the Quran. But Allah preferred not to have it there. And neither is the name of Umar there, neither is the name of Abu Bakr there. No problem to us, because we believe that the Khilafah after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not a matter of divine revelation, but a matter of selection by the Ummah. Surah Al-Wilaya. Surah Al-Wilaya is a missing surah, an allegedly missing surah, that some say the Shia claim to be from the Quran. Now, whoever invented Surah Al-Wilaya must be a Shia, because the entire surah is about Ali and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being Nabiyyun wa Waliyyun ba'duhuma min ba'din wa ana al-Hakimul Khabir, or things of this nature. Now, someone is trying very, very hard to imitate the Quran, is coming up with a ludicrous example of Arabic prose. But anyway, that surah does appear in some books. The book that made it famous was a book called Dabastani Madahib, and it's a book written in Persian, and this book became known in the Indian subcontinent. The Shia say we've got nothing to do with this book, we don't even know who's the author of this book. Others have said that particular surah is not only to be found there, that surah can be traced back right up to the books of the Shia themselves. You can find it within their books. You don't have to go to a weird source such as the Vistani Madahib. You can find it in their own sources. At this moment, I'm not 100% sure to which exact sources do they trace them. But there is a surah of this nature. Now what we can say, in some books there appears an ascription of the surah to the Shia. If the Shia then tells me, well, I don't believe it, I have to take his word for it. He doesn't believe it, he doesn't believe it. Does that absolve him? It absolves him. Does that absolve 1,200 years of Shiism? It doesn't absolve them. Shiism needs to answer for itself in light of its own literature. That individual Shia can come here and tell us, I don't believe it, and I'll say, well, come, you don't believe it. Accept that. Question. Very important question, and very, very important, in fact. You know, when we sit here, we can get carried away by this particular discourse of ours. And we can for a moment imagine that the entire world revolves around, and our entire deen revolves around Sunni and Shia issues. In our history, we've often seen how our divisions are used against us. You don't have to go very far back. I mentioned examples of Afghanistan and Iraq today. Invasions of both countries could not have come about if it wasn't for the divisions between Sunni and Shia. What I did mention before, and I want to reiterate and repeat here tonight, is this. What we need to do, first of all, in order for us to maintain our legacy in our Aqidah and pass it on to our children in an unadulterated form, pure and pristine, we need to have these kind of programs. Education. We cannot have a situation where our children are not aware of these particular incidents in history and which perspective to come to it from. Many of us, before we probably came to sit here, we knew not much about this. Going away from here, we know something about it. Together with that, we need a dose of realism to be injected with it. Right now, I don't know if he's still there, but a week or two ago, Robert Gates was in the Gulf drumming up support against Iran. Why? Iran's nuclear program, going to Saudi Arabia, going to the Emirates and everyone else, and forming an alliance against the Iranians. It is a sign of our weakness as Muslims that we allow our divisions like that to be used still. At a time such as this, I've made it clear before, and I wish these would be the things that our friends from the other side would quote, and not out of context. When it comes to international issues, then Sunni Shia stand side by side. These would be the things that our friends from the other side would quote, and not out of context. When it comes to international issues, then Sunni Shia stand side by side. When it comes to Baytul Maqdis, when it comes to international issues, we stand side by side. In India many years ago, when it came to driving out the British from that country, then even Muslim and Hindu stood side by side. So when it comes to driving out our common enemy, at a time like that, we don't go into Shia Sunni issues. That's not the... So it comes to that. If one of us had to be the president of a Muslim country, and someone comes to him and says that, look, I want to go for that country, you stay quiet. This reminds me, in fact, a story of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu himself, a story which he tells. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal in his book Fadail al-Sahaba narrates it. He says that Sayyidina Ali, at the end of his life, when he saw this unruly anarchist element in his army, every time going against him, he told a story about three oxen. There was a black one, there was a red one, there was a brown one. I don't know if I'm getting the colors correct, but something like that. And one day the lion or the fox came along. And he came to the red one and the brown one and told him that I want to attack the black one. I'm going to attack the black one, I want you two to stay on the side. Don't get involved, then you will be safe. So he goes, attacks the black one and eats him up. And after a while, he comes to the brown one and he says that, look, see the red one? I want him. You stay out of this, I'm going to go for him. And he does so. At last he comes to the last one. Now I'm confused myself, I don't know which one's left. Anyway, the last one. He comes to him and says that, now is your turn. And the last ox says, Ukiltu yawma ukila thawrul aswad. I'm not being eaten today, I was eaten up the day the first ox was eaten up. That day already my demise started. The divisions in the Muslim world are such that they seem not to take cognizance of realities of this nature here. That when we start subdividing against ourselves on those major issues, on international arenas, the world looks at us as what? The world looks at, these are all readers of the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. They look at us like that. I was quoting something and I don't think I completed it. I said Imam Zahabi writes in Siyar Alam al-Nubala, he says the Shia, as bad as the Aqidah might be at times, but when Allah looks at them in their Qiyamah, He will look at them, these were leaders of the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. They might be that bad. They are not the kuffar of this world. They are not the atheists. They are not the Satanists and those evil people. At least they still had some vestige of la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah amongst them. So when it comes to those issues, I think yes, by all means we stand shoulder by shoulder. But we have a very big problem if our international solidarity with the Shia is abused in our own backyards by the spreading of Shiism. Therefore the ball is in the court of our Shia friends. The ball is in their court. Which ball? The ball that says, don't upset this very precarious balance which exists. Don't continuously, without fail, on an ongoing basis, spread literature, build centers, convert the Sunni youth, because whenever you do that, you're making it difficult for us to stand with you on the international platform. You are destroying the unity that you are seeking to achieve. This has been the message of Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradawi. For many years he's been worried about this. He says, yes, we stand together with the Shia on international platforms, but we get upset when we see, well, the Shias are still doing their own things. They are still doing their own, they are still spreading their ideas, they are still speaking ill of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. That is what we cannot accept. So what we have local interests and we have international interests. We separate the one from the other. Internationally, yes, we prepare to stand together. Locally, don't take advantage of us. When you take advantage of us, then even our international solidarity will not stand in the way of us taking action in the manner that we are taking action here tonight.
The last question.
You had open table with Shia before on they call for unity on the basis of what?
This is the last question.
They call for unity on the basis of that we are all members of the same deen, we readers of the same kalima, and we all are faced with the same common enemies. It's a simple recipe of on that basis, that we have to stand together. We have much more in common with one another than with what we differ with one another from. So we stand together on that. But as I said, they constantly spoil the party themselves. Had they stopped with that? Well, I want to add to that something else. I'm not going to generalize for all Shia. I truly believe that there is, in the ranks of the Shia, there are those who also have a problem with the spreading of Shiism in Sunni communities. They also have a problem with it. I only wish that it would be more of them that would speak out against it. Speak out against it, because we don't do the same to you. We don't do the same to you, don't do the same to us. If we can agree to disagree on certain lines and then we can live together with one another, then it's fine. But we've been forced into positions such as this. I make a point now of saying that we respond in the way that we do respond here tonight. It's only by education that we will respond. There will be no weaponry, there will be no violence, there will be education. In education, I think, the last part of your answer previously, we need to educate our children. As we teach them, Amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhir, circumstances has made it such that we need to teach them a bit more about history, about what we believe of the Khulafa, what happened and what did not happen. Those kind of things are important, because they are probably, if not them, in your children and mine, my children and his, but they're going to come up against some person who still feels it is right and his duty to propagate Shiism in Sunni communities, and that's where we will have to be equipped. We've come here to equip ourselves. Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq, inshallah, to take what we have learned and safeguard first of all our own aqeedah, our own legacy, but never fail in maintaining Muslim unity where it counts.